You're watching Phantom Astronaut's Night Terrors, where history's darkest corners come alive, and every shadow tells a story. Tonight, we explore chilling true accounts of murder in the American colonies, a time when life was harsh, justice was swift, and the line between the living and the dead often blurred. These are the stories that shaped America's haunted past. As always, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to help the channel grow. And check the links in the description for more ways to support us. Now, light a candle, lock your doors, and prepare yourself for the tale of the bloody deed of Jamestown. The air in Jamestown, Virginia, was heavy with the stink of swamp and desperation. It was 1654, and the fledgling English settlement teetered between survival and extinction. Supplies were scarce, tempers were shorter, and the specter of death loomed in every shadow. Among the settlers was John Blevins, a wiry man with a face like old parchment and eyes that darted like a rat's. He wasn't well liked, but in a place like Jamestown, where survival was all that mattered, being liked was a luxury. John had come to the New World with dreams of gold and glory, but the reality had been far grimmer. Back-breaking labor, meager rations, and the endless ache of hunger. It was hunger, they said, that drove John to murder. Late in the summer, a woman named Mary Hastings vanished. Mary was one of the few women in the colony, and her absence was noticed immediately. She had been seen tending to the small herb garden behind her hut the evening before, her dark hair tucked beneath a linen cap. By morning, she was gone. The settlers searched for her, their voices carrying through the humid air. They combed the woods, dragged the river, even ventured cautiously toward the Powhatan territory, but Mary had vanished as if swallowed by the earth. Except for one thing. Behind her hut, hidden beneath the trampled leaves, they found a patch of disturbed soil. The men dug with their bare hands, their nails clawing through the damp dirt. And there, beneath the shallow grave, they found her, a mass of twisted limbs and torn flesh. Her throat had been slashed, and her eyes stared skyward, frozen in an expression of terror. The settlement buzzed with fear and speculation. Who among them could commit such a heinous act? Suspicion quickly turned to John Blevins. He'd been seen arguing with Mary days before, his voice raised, his fists clenched. Some said he'd been jealous of her attentions toward another man. Others whispered that he'd been caught stealing from her garden. John denied it, of course. "I've done no such thing," he spat when the governor confronted him. But his protests fell on deaf ears. The settlers were hungry for justice, or perhaps they were just hungry for blood. They dragged John to the gallows tree, his cries echoing through the clearing. As the noose tightened around his neck, John screamed one last time. "It wasn't me. It was the darkness in the woods. The shadow took her." The settlers laughed nervously, but some of them shivered. They knew the stories the Powhatan told, of spirits that lurked in the forest, feeding on fear and blood. But no one spoke of it. They didn't dare. The night after John was hanged, the settlement was gripped by a terrible storm. Thunder cracked like cannon fire, and the wind howled through the trees, carrying with it a sound that chilled the blood. A woman's scream, high and keening, like the wail of a lost soul. Mary Hastings, they said. People began seeing her, or something that looked like her. She appeared at the edge of the forest, her dark hair matted with blood, her hollow eyes fixed on the settlement. She didn't speak, but her presence was enough. Livestock began to die, their bodies found mutilated in ways too similar to Mary's to be coincidence. Children woke screaming, claiming they'd seen Mary standing over their beds, her cold fingers brushing against their cheeks. One by one, the settlers began to unravel. Some fled back to England, their dreams of a new life shattered. Others succumbed to illness or despair, and those who remained whispered of a curse, a punishment for the wrong man's death. Historians have long debated the truth of the bloody deed of Jamestown. Was John Blevins guilty, or was he a scapegoat for a crime that no one wanted to face? Some believe Mary's death was the result of an Indian raid, her body mutilated as a warning to the settlers. Others point to the harsh conditions of the colony, suggesting that hunger and madness drove one of the settlers to murder. But then, there are the stories. The Powhatan spoke of a creature called the Anayehi, a shadow that could slip into a man's soul, twisting his thoughts until he no longer knew right from wrong. They believed it fed on death, growing stronger with every drop of blood spilled on the land. Could the Anayehi have found its way to Jamestown, preying on the settlers in their moment of weakness? Or was it simply a man, driven by jealousy and hunger, who left Mary Hastings to rot in the ground? The story of Mary Hastings and John Blevins has become part of Jamestown's dark history, a tale passed down through generations. Visitors to the historic site claim to feel her presence still. Some say they've seen a figure in colonial dress standing at the edge of the woods, her face obscured by shadows. Others speak of hearing whispers on the wind, voices that seem to echo John's final words. It wasn't me. To this day, the woods around Jamestown are said to be haunted, the trees bearing witness to a crime that remains unsolved, a curse that lingers like a wound that refuses to heal. Thank you for joining me on this chilling journey into the dark history of murder in the American colonies. If tonight's episode of Phantom Astronauts, Night Terrors kept you awake, remember to like, share, and subscribe to help the channel grow. Don't forget to check the links in the description for more ways to support us. This has been Phantom Astronauts, Nocturnal Tales. I'll see you out there.